Welcome to Vermont Farmers Food Center's show, Farmacy Shares the October Harvest. We did a series of shows this summer, and now that our program has shifted to a monthly distribution, we'll be doing an October, November, and December episode for you. Farmacy Project is a program where doctors prescribe patients food. So food is medicine is our motto. And some of the things that we have in our share this week include beautiful radishes, different kinds of squashes, some local pears, Brussels sprouts, potatoes, and leeks, and onion, which I've left half of here as well. So today's share, just looking at this bag, makes me want to just start roasting everything I'm looking at. Even radishes, I mean, I'd probably eat most of them fresh. But this is definitely the time of year where we need olive oil, salt, and pepper on lots of different vegetables. So in the spirit of roasting, I always make a big pan of roasted veggies, and oftentimes I'm left with a lot of them. So this episode is going to be devoted to what we do with our leftover vegetables. And you could also apply it to things like leftover beans and rice, leftover pasta, and different different ways you can repurpose things. So a nice thing to do with some roasted vegetables is throw them in soup at the end. If you've been making your base with your protein, your vegetables, your stock, if you have some leftover roast veggies, you could also use them as a seasoning as well and just throw them into your soups. And if you have an immersion blender, you can kind of puree them to keep them creamier, and all that roasted flavor will mix into the stock and it'll be really tasty. You can also do things like sandwiches, roasted vegetable sandwiches. And a nice thing about squashes when they're roasted is that they get really soft. So you can almost use them as a spread and then put on some fresh greens and some cheese and have a really nice sandwich that way too. Today we're going to be doing a quesadilla. So we're going to be roasting veggies and then just frying a quick quesadilla with some grated cheddar. And we'll be doing a frittata with some eggs here. And then just throwing grated cheddar and the egg custard with milk into a baking dish and making a frittata as well. And we'll be doing a kale salad with our veggies as the croutons, and talking about how kale is the perfect vehicle for holding dressing. It's a great flavor bomb. So first I'm going to start with the frittata. I've got some vegetables roasting in the oven already, and they're starting to smell really good in here. And we've got a few more minutes, so actually I'm going to pivot and talk about chopping, because that's what I love to do as well. I've got a crazy Halloween-y purple potato here, so I'm just going to show you how I chopped half of it for our roasting today. So I just kind of hold it towards me, the length side. I've cut it flat so it's easy to chop. And then I'm just going to use my knife as like a guillotine and just slide it, and I'm holding my fingers back and just cutting little matchsticks. This end is going to be hard, so I'm just going to stick that like that. And then I've got all these nice flats here, so I'm just going to restack them and then cut them in half into sticks. So now we have pieces about that size. And then I'm just going to go through it. So this is kind of a small chop because I wanted to get these vegetables roasted quickly. And that means normally when you're roasting, it's 375 oven, and you want about 1-inch size pieces. These are a little bit smaller, so I'm cooking them a lot quicker. So I'm just going to put these here, and then you just want to kind of keep your eye on the size that you're chopping, because it's nice to have everything about the same size. Next, I'll do a little bit of onion, same thing, flat side down. Sticks. This also applies to carrots, beets, anything. You just give it a steady bottom and then you just cross cut it, and that is that. And they don't all have to be perfect. When you're roasting, it helps, but you can see as long as they're about the same size. In the bowl here, they all look pretty uniform. And then I had put in some delicata squash, which is my favorite, and it doesn't store very long, so I like to use it whenever I see it. So I just scoop out the seeds with this, just with a spoon, using that flat side down that I cut the top and tail off of to give myself a solid foundation. I'm just going to throw these not on the floor, but in my compost bag. And then now I've got this beautiful thing, and with this kind of shape, you could even cut these real thin and then just fry them in some coconut oil with like cinnamon dusted on them after they're cooked, and they're really, really good that way. What I'm gonna do is just cut it in half again, so I have 2 long pieces that way, and then cut them into sticks. And then I can just cross-cut these as well. So it's kind of the same thing, sticks then cross-cut. And you can do 2 or 4 at a time. And look how easy this squash is to cut. It's just like so tender. You can eat the skin. It's just, you can even just roast them lengthwise down, cover them in olive oil, salt, and pepper, and then they come out of the oven and you could just eat it. Like the skin is so tender. Oh, just one of my favorite fall things. So that, I mean, just in a couple of minutes right there, I cut up a good meal's worth of veggies. And this little silly thing is a wonderfully flavorful squash. It looks like a buttercup. No, butternut, sorry, wrong squash variety. I don't remember the name of it, but they're really, really good. If you cut them in half and then roast them, you can stuff them with like nuts and drizzle them with maple syrup, and they are just like, any kind of delicious pumpkin spicy thing you want to eat for the fall. Here's some beeping happening. Yep, these are done. I'm going to turn this off. Okay, is that on? So we have the roasted vegetables here looking very roasty toasty. I love all the little brown bits, so I'm just scraping to get everything kind of together here. So this, as I said, I did it a little bit shorter, and I'm also using a convection oven where the hot air blows around, so my cooking time was only 20 minutes. If I was at home with a 375 oven that wasn't a convection, I'd probably do half an hour with this size veggie. And I also was kind of aiming to keep them smaller because I am going to be folding them into things like a frittata and a quesadilla, and I'm using tiny little corn tortillas. So these all look really, really good. So I'm just going to let them cool a bit and get my frittata mix going. And a frittata is kind of a fun thing to do when in a pinch, when you're home, you're really, really hungry, everyone's yelling, and you could just do a big breakfast for dinner type meal with it. And you can get veggies in it, cheddar cheese, eggs are great protein, and you could serve it with a side salad. You could make some whole wheat pancakes to go with it. It's just a great, I feel like most people like eggs, and they're a great source of nutrition that's not gonna like break the budget. So I'm gonna do a 6-egg frittata because that's like a 2-person one, and that is also about the size of the pan I'm working with today. So just 6 eggs. And you can tell these are nice local eggs. The yolks are bright orange and happy, even though the days are getting darker. And so that is also kind of helps with my seasonal effect of looking at bright orange yolks. I got a little yolk of shell in here, which happens. So I'm just going to grab a fork. And if your kids are helping you crack eggs, which most kids love to do, it's not a big deal if you get yolk in. So kids, if you're watching this, everybody gets shells in their eggs. All right, so I've got my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then about a cup of milk can go with that. I'm just gonna eyeball it, but you can also pour it if if that's your thing too. And then salt and pepper, of course. And then I'm just going to mix this up so it's basically like a custardy scrambled eggs. When I make scrambled eggs at home, I like to put like a little tablespoon of milk in them just to make them creamy. And this is basically the same recipe for a quiche. You would do probably 3 eggs and a half a cup to a cup of milk, however you like your creamy quiche. And then you would pour that, you would put your cheese in the pie crust and then your veggies on top and then pour your custard to the top and then you would bake that for half an hour on 375. And we are going to throw our cheese into our frittata. So you want about a cup of cheese. I also really like tomato paste as an ingredient. So like if I'm sauteing onions or anything, I always do a little squeeze. So I'm just going to do a little squeeze into this. And it will probably reappear later on in the episode. Stir, stir, stir. It's also helpful too if you're doing a lot of cracking eggs to kind of scramble the eggs up before you add the milk, and that gets the whites and the yolks blended together nicely. Another thing to kind of think about too when you're building flavor in a frittata, like with tomato paste, do you want your tomato paste clumpy or do you want it mixed throughout? Sometimes it's nice to get those bright little bites of a little bit of tomato paste in it. So I try to keep some of it clumpy and then some of it not. All right, so now I'm just going to butter my dish. I'm just going to smear this all around and then give my hands a good wash. And you want to get the rims. This is also another thing, kids that love sensory kinds of things. This actually might be a nightmare for them, or it might be one of their favorite things. I really like it. I like getting my hands into food and constantly washing my hands, which makes my hands very dry, but it's worth it. All right, so now that we've got this, I believe our veggies have cooled enough. In an ideal frittata, they would be cool, like you would pull them out of the oven, out of the fridge in their container to kind of warm up a bit to room temperature. And these are like the opposite right now, so they're easy to handle, which is what I want as well. So I'm just gonna do a nice scoop, take about 1/3 of what we've got what we're working with here. So again, we've got purple potato, leeks. Oh yeah, I put a little bit of leek in there just for fun. Half of an onion, a big handful of Brussels sprouts, and some delicata squash. And I'm just gonna stir this up again. Oh, I forgot to preheat my oven. Okay. Baking. All right, and then we want the oven at about 425 degrees. So in we go. Frittata is basically a quiche with no crust on it. A little bit more protein in it, and it's just an easy, crowd-pleasing dish that you can put lots of different things in. Any kinds of seasonings. Actually, oh my gosh, because I'm from Maryland, I indulge in Old Bay as often as I can. So I am just going to do a little pinch of this. It smells really good. I grew up never eating seafood, but always putting Old Bay in my eggs. And on my macaroni and cheese. Okay. All right, so that's going to bake for about 15 to 25 minutes. Just going to set this tricky timer. All right, because again, I'm using the convection oven, I'm going to put it on 12, and we'll see how that looks after a bit. All right, so before I pivot, I just want to clean my countertop here a bit. All right. So the next delicious thing we will be making is a quesadilla with these veggies. And this is just like a 5-minute, cheese, roasted vegetables, tortillas. It's gonna be really good. So we've got different seasonings we could add. If you have hot sauce, I would say definitely add that. I'm kind of tempted to put Old Bay in it, but I just did that, so I feel like I should mix it up a bit. So I really like turmeric, cumin, paprika, and tomato paste are pretty much what I put in everything. And I just put a little bit of salt and pepper on these veggies. So I think what I'm gonna do is just, as I build this, I'm just gonna sprinkle a tiny bit. And I'm also kind of thinking about melting butter with a little bit of tomato paste for the outside crust of the tortilla. So we might do that too. So I like to fry. You could also use olive oil, but again, variety is good, so I'm using butter. And I'm going to start on medium-low heat. This is a gas stove, which is a wonderful way to cook, and it does go a lot faster than the electric stoves that we are used to. So I'm just going to let that melt a bit. And then I'm going to take my layer here. Put a tiny little bit in here. So I'm just mixing the tomato paste up with the butter a bit and just coating the bottom of the pan so the quesadilla does not stick. And then I'm just going to put that on that big chunk of butter there. And a little bit of veggies. Oop. These purple potatoes are so good. They have kind of like a sweeter flavor to them, I want to say. I know that certain vegetable colors mean that they're higher in certain vitamins than others. And potatoes have a lot of potassium, and I think the purples have a lot more of that as well. So next I'm going to add a little bit of cheese. Looks like it's ready to be flipped, so I'm just going to hold the bottom, flip it over. Lost a few things, which is fine. You can just kind of put it back together, stick them all in there, and then get it back on that butter. And this is coming along very nicely. I don't know if you can see it, but it's puffing up, which is a good thing. All right, so next I'm going to pivot to the kale salad. I brought some kale from my house, which is still going strong. And it tastes so good this time of year. It's small but mighty, so I really love kale because of how tough the greens are. You can kind of like bruise them and beat them up, and they just like will release more flavor. So they're kind of like the perfect green to put like a maple vinaigrette on, which you could just do a little bit of maple syrup with like a teaspoon of olive oil and a teaspoon of balsamic vinegar, and that whisked up and then rubbed into kale is really, really delicious. And maple mustard's good. A little bit of mustard in that as well is very tasty on kale. Caesar salad dressing. I mean, I could go on and on and on about all the great dressings, but so mine are real leggy, so I'm taking off my stems, and then I'm just gonna rip them up. You can also cut them really thin if you prefer a very small cut kale salad. I like my pieces bigger. So here's a little bowl, and I'm just gonna throw the kale in there, check my quesadilla. Yep, this looks good. I'm just going to flip that a bit. Let that sit. And then with the dressing, you can whisk it up separately together. I'm just going to kind of do it in this bowl because I don't have the maple syrup to whisk into it. So I'm just going to do red wine vinegar and a little olive oil. And I think I'm going to throw a little dill in there as well because I really think that might be nice. Just a little bit. And then you just put your hands right in there and just smash it all up. And that is the base. And then you could also add things like pumpkin seeds, any kinds of crumbled pecans or walnuts would be nice. And you can just see how the kale kind of holds that dressing. It just loves to be massaged. This is also a really good time of year to be eating fresh greens like this that like all of the vitamins in them also kind of help our bodies stay limber. I always feel a little bit sluggish this time of year, even though it's beautiful and crisp outside in the morning. It does not feel that way. So eating things like this, even for breakfast with like a poached egg on top, would be a great way to start the day. And then I'm just going to use some of my veggies as croutons here. Just to give it a little more flavor. The squash in particular I'm going for because that is really delicious. So, and then we still have veggies left over, which we could puree into a smoothie. No, I'm kidding. Let's not do that. All right, so let me check on the frittata, and then we can cut into the quesadilla. Yep, this says 2 minutes left, but I think it looks good. So there's the frittata. You can see it's all puffed out. The more you whisk it and get air in, the higher the rise. Just like a souffle in a way. There's no flour in it though or anything. So that is our food. I'm going to plate it up for us to look at and sample out. Let me find a plate. Here's our beautiful newsletter as well. All right. Oh yeah, it got nice and crispy. I just remembered I forgot to add my wonderful cumin, turmeric, and paprika. But there's still cheese involved, so that'll be good. And you can see all the cheesiness there. Butter, cheese, veggies, tortillas. And then I like to use Hello Train, one of these guys to kind of scrape out the edges. Did a pretty good job buttering, I have to say. So it looks good. And I'm just going to cut a little wedge out here. And then you can always add things to this. You don't have to just use your leftovers, but you could have like some cooked sausage, some leftover pieces of bacon you could crumble into it, fresh tomato slices you could dot on top. Even if you had a can of pumpkin puree or something, you could kind of whisk that into the egg mix. Anything. Frittatas are wonderful at adapting to leftovers. Whoop, flinging things around. All right, so here is some of it. You can tell it's kind of the air is coming out of it a bit. It still looks pretty good. And then we've got our salad. So that is in less than half an hour with just leftover veggies. We made a great snack, breakfast, and dinner, and all with our share. So I hope you all enjoy your share this month. If you're interested in learning more about Farmacy Project, go to vermontfarmersfoodcenter.org, and we have a list of all of our programs on the website, as well as information on how to go about finding and talk to your doctors as well. And the community health team has been a great partner in referring patients to the program, and we've just had a great time cooking with them, getting to know them, and talking food. We have a little Facebook group for our participants where they share recipes. So I urge you all to reach out and learn more about the program and other cool things that we have going on at Vermont Farmers Food Center. All right, take care. Bye.